Welcome to Cardano Over Coffee with your hosts Hero Pool, Epoch Pool, Lido Nation, Jenny from the Blockchain, BlockJock, TCT, and always chillin' CookThyme. Today we have Dr. Lars Brünjes CTO of Genius Yield and Director of Education at Input Output Global. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and let's learn what Genius Yield is up to.
Hey, Lars, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. I'm excited to hear about all the updates with Genius Yield and everything you guys got going on, and got the token sale going on right now, the public sale, and it'll be exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk about that.
So, before we get into the nitty gritty, just want to kind of welcome you to the space, and also say thanks for joining us. I know both Hero and I are Genius Yield ambassadors for Clarity, and we've been pretty excited about what's been kind of unfolding in the Genius Yield platform. So, really glad to have you here, and to see the team continuing to grow. And I guess to start us off, are you drinking any coffee today? And if so, what's your kind of favorite coffee choice?
And not right now, but I normally have espresso after lunch and dinner. So, but I'm not really much into, I don't have a special blend or anything, unfortunately. So I'm very boring in that regard.
I don't know. Espresso after dinner sounds pretty the opposite of boring. It sounds like you got
Okay.
plans that night.
Oh yeah, I best work at nights. I love it when it's peaceful and quiet, so I often work very late.
So I guess I'm curious just to understand like where like your team is at. Like, do you have a remote team for Genius Yield? Are they are any of them co-located? Do you kind of meet with the Genius Yield team daily? Curious if you can just talk a little bit about the team you have at Genius Yield.
Right, of course. So in that regard, it's very similar to IOG, that it's a fully remote company. We are, legally located in Switzerland. So our CEO, Laurent, he lives in Switzerland and one of our co-founders. But in principle, we are distributed all over the world. I'm in Germany, and our fourth co-founder, Marvin, who unfortunately can't join today, he's on Hawaii. And we have people in Nepal and France and basically everywhere. As for meeting, there are, of course, stand-ups and so on. We haven't yet had a full company physical meet, but we plan that for early next year. Some of us have met, of course. The founders have met a couple of times, but we want to meet everyone very soon as well.
So since you're in Germany, I guess, do you have any thoughts on the Balls energy drink? Is that something that you have in your refrigerator?
No, never heard of it, unfortunately.
Oh no. Hero, save the conversation, please.
Hero actually got called out. He's a volunteer. Yeah, he's a volunteer firefighter. He just posted in our group chat that he got called out, so he's probably getting that.
All right. Usually the alley oop there is reliable, but it is what it is. So I'm going to be basically just asking some high level questions for the next few minutes, and invite all the co-hosts to kind of jump in and ask anything that's on their minds, and we'll hear kind of from Lars around the public sale that's going on, and mostly what I want to learn about is the Genius Yield platform, and what that complete vision looks like, because my understanding is that we're going to be going live here in 2023. So I want to know what I should be excited about, and what you think about that, Lars.
Sure. Happy to try to answer all your questions.
So why don't we start with the public sale, and just kind of highlight any critical dates in your mind, or how's it going? How's been the reception? Is the public sale kind of doing well, or are we at the tail end? Where are we at?
Right. I mean, I should maybe say that because I'm obviously more involved on the technical side, but sure, I can say a bit about the public sales. I mean, first of all, as far as the technology is concerned, I'm very proud of that, or we are very proud of that, because it's a fully secure, decentralized launchpad that we're using, and we are using that, and that we developed ourselves. And I think it's maybe the first one, or at least one of the first ones. So in the old days, I've spoken to several projects that did their launch by basically people emailing them, or using their wallets to send them money, ADA, and then basically they by hand sent them tokens back. And which obviously, it seems to have worked in the past, but it's obviously not very secure, and it's very centralized, and you have to trust the project. And so we based everything on smart contracts where basically the buyers don't have any risk. So the way it works is they lock the ADA that they want to use to sell tokens in a smart contract that we developed. And then they are guaranteed to either get tokens or at least get the ADA back. I mean, it's not guaranteed that they will get tokens because a round can be oversubscribed, or they can be on some blacklist, not having done KYC or whatever. But in any case, if they don't receive all the tokens they wanted to buy, then they will get appropriately ADA back. So it could be that they get all their ADA back, or that they can only get a part of the tokens they asked for, and then they will get the appropriate change. So that's quite exciting, I think. And of course, we are using that now for our own public sales, which is in 4 rounds. But we also want to make it available for other projects if they want to use our launch platform. So we are just the first ones that use it. So it's general enough to support other tokens as well. And as for the public sales, that started 1.5 weeks ago, I believe. So it's, as I said, 4 rounds. So the first 3 rounds are restricted to certain groups of people. I don't know the details, but it's basically how much they supported us during the ISPO, and whether they got certain NFTs, whether they delegated for a long time or a lot of ADA and so on. So it's so the first round was last week, and that was extremely successful. So that was oversubscribed. So we sold more than 100% basically. And I think now the 3rd round just started, so the 2nd is over. That was not as successful, but that was because the group of people that were entitled to buy tokens in that round was quite restricted, so it was a short list. And also a lot of them were actually not allowed to participate because they were, for example, US citizens. So the 3rd round will also be restricted, but then everything that hasn't been sold in the first 3 rounds will be available for everyone in the 4th round. So that's completely open to the public then. And of course, we hope that will be very successful. And that's over, I believe, 20th of December or something. And then we will do the distribution. So we'll look at, how. So the way it works is if a round was not oversubscribed, then everybody basically that's entitled gets what they asked for. And if it was oversubscribed, then everybody will get proportionally less, so that it adds up to the available amount, which is also actually an innovation that we did. I think in like on launches on Ethereum, for example, it's always a big race who puts in his order first. It's this first come, first serve. And we believe that that's basically bad for the nerves, but also technology-wise, because it leads to these peak network situations and congestion and so on. So the way ours is set up, it doesn't matter when you place your order. So there's the round goes over several days, and you place your order sometime during that period, and then it doesn't matter whether you were the first or the last, so everybody is treated equally in that regard. So we just look at the available tokens and how much people ask for, and then calculate how much everybody gets proportionally, and do this distribution, which, as I said, will start, I think, on the 21st of December or something, and will be over by the 25th, I believe.
I went ahead and
Awesome.
I'm back, by the way. I apologize. I got called out and then got canceled. So I am back, and I do apologize about that to both of you.
No
I pinned to
problem.
the
Welcome
top.
back.
I pinned to the top. The start of round 3 is actually today. So that's pinned to the top if you're interested in looking into round 3 or the next round.
Okay.
So a couple things that you mentioned, Lars, I guess KYC, this sounds like, everyone who participates in this, decentralized thing also needs to be KYC'd. Was that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's for legal reasons. I mean, I'm by no means a legal expert, but we needed to do that, I think, to follow Swiss law.
And what does that entail? Are we providing passports or licenses or socials, or can you just maybe tell us, how intrusive that KYC process is?
Yeah, I actually did it myself because we tested this launchpad quite thoroughly before, so we had lots of rounds on testnet and even one on the mainnet. So I also did this KYC once. And actually, it's not, I mean, done by Genius Yield. So we work with a company that offers that, and it's actually quite painless. I mean, for me, it was over in 2 minutes or so. So and it's basically automated. So you just, I think I showed a picture of my German ID. Passport would also have been sufficient. I think that was basically it. I think it's a selfie and a picture of, I mean, it's online, did it on the laptop. So I think I had to take a selfie with my cam and then hold up my passport. And that was it basically.
Got it. And then I guess the other thing you mentioned is that U.S. citizens then are not allowed to participate. So if we KYC as a U.S. citizen, then we'll be blacklisted.
Yes, but I think that has to do with, I mean, as I said, I'm unfortunately not an expert on these things, but I believe that that's basically some US law that forbids its citizens to participate in these things. So
Yeah.
unfortunately,
I
yeah.
have to call my congressman because that sounds like bollocks.
And I think it's not just the US, but of course the US is like the biggest portion of people that are affected, I believe.
All right. So all my international friends, please leave me a DM and we will talk. Hero,
So
any questions about the public sale?
I have a question, Lars. Are you doing a order book style DEX, or are you doing an AMA or AM style? And why did you choose one over the other?
Not really a question to the public sale, but I'm happy to answer it, of course. Order book. But we will have, I mean, not pure order book in the sense, I mean, there will not just be orders, even though in principle that would already be a functioning DEX. But there will also be what we call liquidity positions. So they are a little bit like pools, but they're different because I mean, in a pool, a lot of liquidity providers pool their liquidity, and the price is determined by this constant product formula. And for us, it's basically just every liquidity provider has its own position. So that's just a UTXO, and the price is fixed. So it's highly concentrated liquidity. So it's, I mean, similar to a pool in the sense that it can be used in both directions to, I mean, trade tokens from A to B or B to A, but it's at a fixed price that the liquidity provider sets. So if he wants to have a spread, then he has to create several of these positions. And the reasons we did it, I mean, actually, Marvin and I had a presentation about that at the Cardano Summit in Lausanne some weeks ago. So if you're interested, that's also freely available on YouTube, which was about the UTXO model that Cardano uses and how to write smart contracts that are suited for it. Because basically, what we are saying or what we believe is that people are used to Ethereum, or a lot of smart contract developers come from the Ethereum blockchain and then basically try to write contracts in the same way that they're used to from Ethereum. But the model that Ethereum uses, this accounting model, is completely different. So that leads to inefficient, suboptimal contracts. And we basically have to play to Cardano's strength and fully embrace this UTXO model, and the order book style just fits much better to the UTXO model, so that will lead to much higher performance and throughput than if we simply copied something like Uniswap from Ethereum.
I'm glad you mentioned that video because I did watch it, and it was great. And I recommend anybody listening to take the time to listen to that. Sorry, I kind of got off base from the sell, but it's been a question I've been wanting to ask you because I wanted to hear your thoughts on why order book versus AMA.
Right, sure. So I think it's really the right approach for Cardano, because we have these UTXOs that are very independent, and you would just create a huge bottleneck if you, or from the point of centralization, if you create these pools, because then basically there can only be one interaction with the pool per block, and if you have like all these independent orders and independent liquidity positions, then many more trades can happen in the same block, and it's much more decentralized.
And we definitely like decentralization, so I think that's a pretty good path. I'm glad to also hear that the public sale has decentralization kind of built into it as well, right? You're using smart contracts from the get-go.
Yes.
So are these smart contracts publicly accessible, or are they kind of private at this point?
At this point, they're private, but that's not like a philosophical decision. I mean, on the contrary, I've always said, and I think the whole point, I mean, when you explain smart contracts to people that never heard about them, then, I mean, when I do that, then I always say, well, with legal contracts, traditional contracts, you have this problem that the language may be ambiguous, and so it's not completely clear what it actually means, and there can be a dispute about the meaning and so on. So on the blockchain, we replace that with basically mathematics, so the rules are completely clear and out in the open, and everybody can inspect them, and you know exactly what you're going to get into when you engage with the smart contract. So obviously, I believe that they must be public. I think it's just like a logistic thing. So we will, of course, make them public. I think at the moment, I mean, obviously, you can check on the blockchain. I mean, the way Cardano works when you interact with the smart contract, I mean, not right now, because now only the orders have been placed, so there has not been interaction with that. But when we fill the orders, then we have to, I mean, that's just how Cardano works. We have to put the code into the transaction that actually fills the orders. But it's, of course, I mean, then you would need to read Pluto's core, which is not everybody's cup of tea, obviously. But yeah, we fully want to make all our smart contracts public, and not only the smart contracts, also, I mean, as much of the other code that we use as we can. I mean, for example, we have this frame, we call it a Genius Yield framework. It's basically a general purpose PAB replacement, so which enables you to write smart contracts and inspect the blockchain, submit transactions, construct transactions. And we also want to make that open source. So the reason we haven't yet is just that it's, I mean, needs some cleaning up and some better documentation and so on. But yes, so we definitely want to make them public.
That's awesome. And I guess you just touched on something that I'm pretty curious about, right? So you work for both IOG and Genius Yield, right? So when you're talking about, building something, alternative to the PAB, like what, I don't know, how does that make you feel when you're developing something like that? Is like, how do you know you shouldn't be kind of building it from within IOG versus within Genius Yield? And, how are these, like, how's the feedback loop working between the Genius Yield team and IOG, if that makes sense?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, yes. So I'm director of education at IOG, which is also my main job, and CTO of Genius Yield. And I personally think it works very well. I mean, because in the last 2 years or so, I've spent most of my time at IOG teaching Plutus. And of course, in order to teach something, you have to first learn it and learn it very well in order to be able to explain it. So I'm quite deep into Plutus, but so I think Genius Yield gives me a perfect opportunity to actually apply all the things I've learned, basically theoretical things to apply them on a practical project. And I think it basically the benefit flows both ways because I mean I have my expertise and knowledge from IOG, which I can apply to help Genius Yield, but also the experiences we get at Genius Yield, of course, flow back to basically my role as a teacher at IOG, so I can basically have the practical experience that I can use to make my lectures more relevant. And as for interaction, I mean, first of all, it's not as if, I mean, we don't want to compete with IOG, obviously. But I mean, for example, in the case with the PAB, it was just that IOG came to the conclusion that it was basically a too big a task that they wanted to take on, and that they wanted to solve too many problems with the version of the PAB, and turned out it just didn't work out as well as they had hoped. So now the idea is anyway that IOG will like concentrate on specific small focused tools and write those instead, and also rely on the community to help and build infrastructure and provide tools and so on. So actually we are in discussion with IOG, between IOG and Genius Yield now about this open sourcing the Genius Yield framework. So IOG is certainly, I mean, not only not opposed to it, but they're actually glad that I mean, not just Genius Yield, I mean, there are various other projects or companies like MLabs, for example, that have written lots of tools for Cardano. So actually IOG is glad about that and tries to support it and to coordinate it, because it would be stupid if everyone basically did their own thing. So it's better if it's sort of somewhat coordinated and then benefits the whole community and not just a single company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that there's kind of ample communication there, and they are kind of keeping up with the developments that I don't want to say compete, but kind of overlap with some of the PAB functionality. So that's really good to hear. But let me pause here and see if there's any other questions from our co-host before kind of we move to maybe a different topic.
You know me, I'm not the technical guy. Maybe Jenny has something.
I don't have a question on this. No, I was just in something else, but that's cool. You can move on.
Cool. Well, I think we've talked a good amount about the public sale. So for those of you who are not U.S. citizens, you should be checking out the public sale. Hero put a tweet at the top, and that's going to be running for, I guess, another week at this point. I heard the 29th I heard the 20th. So definitely time is of the essence on that. I know I wish I could participate. I'm a U.S. citizen, so not too happy about that, but I understand where we're at with the landscape. So I hope I have friends here that are going to take advantage of that. Any questions before I move on to the Genius Yield platform and the functionality and the utility of the GENS token? Because I think that's where my head is at.
I think that's a great place to go.
Cool. So let's say, Lars, we've all done the public sale. We all have our gens. We have wallets full of gens tokens. When are we gonna be able to kind of interact with the DEX? And what is that utility that gens token is gonna give me?
Okay, so first of all, I mean, we obviously try to get the gens token out. No, sorry. I mean, the gens token is out now. Sorry. I mean, the DEX out as soon as possible, early next year. And I mean, it's also, I mean, we have a lot of things already ready. I mean, the smart contracts actually, that you could call the heart of the DEX, have been ready for many months now and audited and so on. But of course, writing a D app is not just smart contracts. So I think Marvin said it's maybe 5% smart contract Bluetooth code, and the rest is other stuff. And so, I mean, it's all sorts of things like transaction ingesters to listen to transaction to the blockchain, to new transactions coming in, and then see whether they have anything to do with our DEX, its orders or liquidity positions or whatever. And of course, the UI and everything has to be performed, everything has to be tested. So it's a lot of work. I mean, we're very far, and also this launchpad, for example, a lot of the technology that we use for the launchpad will actually also be used for the DEX. So a lot of the components are actually generic. I mean, this transaction ingester I mentioned. I mean, that's basically the same for the launchpad and the DEX. It's just that it listens or ingests different types of transactions, because now we are interested in these public sale orders, and then we will be interested in the DEX orders. So I mean, a lot of what I mean, this is now it's not two completely different things. I mean, it's all been basically work that is essential for the DEX as well. So we hope to come out early next year, but I can't give a specific date. Obviously, we try to do it as quickly as possible. As for what you can do with the GENS tokens once you buy them, I mean, even before the DEX comes out, you will be able to stake them. So we are very close. Probably this week we'll be finished with our staking platform. So it will be possible to stake the GENS, so lock them for a certain amount of time and then receive rewards. So, for example, you get 20% rewards of all the trading fees earned from the Genius stack, and additional 20% rewards of the vault fees paid by Genius Yield smart liquidity vaults once we have them, and so on. So the staking program will be available immediately after the public sale. And then in principle, I mean, once the DEX is active, for example, you can participate in governance with the GENS tokens. So, I mean, we will have basically a DAO eventually, or where many decisions or all decisions regarding Genius Yield can be taken by the community, or in that case, the GENS holders. So that's an important aspect. And then we also have this Genius Academy where we try to educate people about blockchain and related topics, which is free in principle, but we will also have premium content that can then be accessed with GENS. And we also plan to do a Genius Pay crypto wallet. It will make it easier to convert fiat into crypto and ADA or GENS, and there will also be exclusive perks for GENS holders there. So I mean, lots of interesting things. But as I said, you will be immediately able to stake them if once you have bought them and they have been distributed in about a week or 1.5 weeks.
Awesome. So there's a bunch there to unpack. Do you know when the ISPO participants will be getting their allocation of tokens?
I don't know the precise date, but it will also be around that time. So when the public sales people get, no, sorry, I think originally we said 1st of January.
I can help. I checked the dates,
Yeah?
Lars. I'm sorry to interrupt because I follow the product. Yeah, it's January 1st, 2023 for the first 50%, and June 1st for the second 50%. Sorry to butt in. I just wanted to help.
No, that's fine. Thank you. But I do believe it will probably be something like January, like a week later or so, because I mean, I know we said 1st of January, but I mean, that's maybe not the best of ideas, because then everybody will be hung over from the 31st of December still. And we don't want to make a mistake there, obviously. I mean, it's, I think, 18,000 people that receive GENS, and we must get that right. So, I mean, obviously we won't do it by hand, but nevertheless, it's quite a lot of transactions. So it might be a couple of days later, but yes, it will be. But I think that the final word about that hasn't been spoken yet. I know the 1st of January is announced, but I mean, it will be very shortly after that, as soon as basically we can do it.
Okay, well, that sounds great. I know I look forward to using the staking platform. And I guess one thing I wanted to touch on before we get too far is something you mentioned about the Launchpad and the DEX and how you're kind of reusing the code there. For those listening, I think that's usually a very good sign of an engineering team if they're able to write code that is actually modular and reusable. So hearing that they're, applying, the code in multiple places and it's actually going to yield, value, that's going to speed up their team. So I was definitely happy to hear that you're finding kind of modular uses of your code that you've written. So that sounded exciting to me. And we're halfway through the show now, and I see a couple of hands. So before I ask, let these hands kind of come up with their question, I want to remind folks we're halfway through the show. This is a great time to share out the space. We've grown a lot in the last 30 minutes, so there's a bunch of people who can retweet the tweet at the top in the Jumbotron. If you kind of go to the first one in the queue, that's the one that you can kind of share, retweet, throw a comment on, whatever have you. But this is a great time to just engage on Twitter to help us get this conversation to more people. The next thing I have to say for kind of the benefit of our guests and for, everyone in the space, we talk a lot about decentralizing decentralized blockchains, and in order for Cardano to be the #1 decentralized blockchain, we have to actually stake our ADA. And to do that, you probably want to get that ADA off of an exchange. So if you're one of the poor souls like Hero, who lost all his money in Celsius, or like those poor souls that lost all their money in FTX or whatever have you, they were not practicing smart security. You want to have your keys to your crypto. So, we highly recommend, and we don't do a lot of recommendations on this show, but we can highly recommend getting your money off of centralized exchanges and putting them into, wallets that you own the keys for that are also delegated to pools that will further allow this to be the #1 decentralized blockchain. So please take a moment and make sure you're not leaving any funds on any centralized places, and do consider Epoch Pool, Lido Pool, or Hero Pool for your staking needs. And that has been your halfway infomercial. Thank you for listening.
If I may, because you mentioned staking, I just want to say that, Cardano's stake, the ADA staking on Cardano is very special amongst blockchains, because there's this cool feature that you don't have to lock them. So you have the ADA in your wallet, they are staked, but you can nevertheless spend them at any time. So the staking function of ADA is decoupled from the payment function. So that's very cool. And we actually also want to use that in the DEX, because the way these addresses work, so it's maybe a bit technical, but an address on Cardano has two parts. It's like a pair. The first pair is a so-called payment component that determines who, under which conditions, can spend the ADA. And the second pair is the staking component, which determines if and where the ADA are staked. And that can also be used not just for like your wallet, but also for smart contracts. So, for example, we have our DEX order, and you want to place ADA in order because you want to exchange them against gens, for example, then you can basically use this order smart contract address as the payment part, but you can use your own staking key as the stake part, which means that while your ADA is sitting there waiting to be exchanged for gens, it's still delegated to your favorite stake pool. So maybe for orders, that's not very interesting, and maybe won't even do it like that, because if the DEX works well, then an order will only be open for a short period of time. But it may be very interesting for liquidity positions. So if somebody provides ADA as liquidity, then in these liquidity positions, the ADA might be locked for potentially, or not locked. Of course, you can always get them out, but might sit there for a very long time. And I think it's very cool that Cardano offers this possibility that even while you provide liquidity for our DEX, it's still, the ADA is still staked to stake pool of your choice. So we definitely want to do that, to write our, it has nothing to do with the contracts, but to write our infrastructure in a way that it can handle that to people when they place liquidity, don't have to forfeit staking. They can do both. They can place ADA as liquidity and at the same time still stake to a stake pool. I just think that's very cool.
Are you saying that I can, through the Genius DEX, bring in some ADA, have it delegated to Epoch, and maybe put in a stop loss order? And if that stop loss doesn't trigger for 5 months, I will actually be accruing rewards in that period?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That's, pardon my French, that's fucking amazing. That doesn't, to my knowledge, I can't do that anywhere else.
Yep.
And I mean, it's just a feature of, in principle, it's just a feature of Cardano because Cardano is designed that way. So basically you just send it to an address where the first part is this order, the stop loss order smart contract, but the second part is your stake key. And then while the money is sitting there at that UTXO, you will still stake. It puts a little bit strain or more, I mean, the infrastructure. I mean, if you didn't do that, then basically all the orders would sit at the same address. So it's easier to spot them on the blockchain. Now they can sit at different addresses. So we basically have to scan all addresses and check whether the first part of the address corresponds to this smart contract. But it's doable. And I think it's really a very cool feature. And as I said, especially for liquidity providers, but also in your example, if you really have a stop loss order sitting there for a long time, then of course it's also interesting for these orders.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get these hands here. Emmanuel, you were first, and then Ed, and then we'll kind of circle back to the hosts. Emmanuel, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Epoch. So hi, Lars. Good to hear from you.
Hello.
A thought I had in mind. What were some of the things that your team wanted to do with regards to the token sale? Like what were some of the ambitions that you had and you realized like, oh, hey, we can't do this? Like what were the major challenges that made you take the route of like, okay, we're going to use some KYC service out there, and we'll just keep it basic?
I think in principle we achieved everything that we wanted to for the token sale. I mean, I'm not saying it was easy. I mean, especially with this KYC, because as I mentioned, it's not from us. That's some service we're using. I believe the integrating that was quite troublesome, and I mean we need lots of tests, and I mean the usual thing when you write a web application. I mean, it must be performant enough, and if you have lots of requests, that it can still handle that and those things. But I mean, there were no principal problems. So I think all the features that we wanted this token sale platform this launchpad to have, we actually got in there successfully. Which is not to say that there is no room for improvement. I mean, maybe we would like more features in the future. I mean, for example, one feature we have is that the price in a round is fixed. Maybe it would be interesting to have something more like an auction or so, where people can basically bid, especially for something like now this fourth round. I don't know. So obviously there may be features you can think of that might be desirable and that we don't have, but everything we wanted to have for the start for our public sale, we actually got in there.
Thank you, Dr. Lars.
You're welcome.
All right, Ed, you want to go?
Yeah, one of the things that appealed to me early about the project, other than Lars's participation in general, was the fact that people could support their stake pools natively on their own. There wasn't any sort of funky mechanism that the community had to vote, and these are the pools that are acceptable, and these are the ones that aren't. People could simply just go, this is the pool I want to delegate to, when providing yield. And I think that's a big part towards keeping our single pool operators alive. So and I don't think any other DEX really implemented that, even though that they could. It's technically possible. The thing, I know Marvin's kind of the yield optimizer guy, Lars, but can you maybe speak to some of the details about that? Because it's a fairly unique feature, not just on Cardano DEXs, but my understanding, and it's unique within the industry to have an order book DEX with the yield optimizer together, which was a big draw for me because I don't have the time. You have these advanced platforms coming, but most people don't have the time or the acumen to kind of figure that out, even if it's the most robust DEX in the world. Most of us don't have time to, sit there and monitor it and be a quant or a tradfi. So the idea that I can just pick a basic strategy, whether it's conservative or more aggressive, and it just kind of does its thing, that's going to be hugely attractive for everybody.
Yes. So as you said, Marvin is the expert on the yield optimization, but in broad strokes, I can, of course, say something about it. I mentioned before that it's an order book style, so it's we don't have these pools, but instead we have these positions, and I mentioned that they are at fixed prices, which has lots of advantages because there's no impermanent loss, for example. But on the other hand, also it has like the disadvantage that it puts some demand on the liquidity provider that you basically have to shift your positions. It means, the point of an AMA pool is that everybody that puts liquidity in there makes money on every trade, no matter what the price is. So that's the advantage of these AMA pools. The way these positions work is that, if a trade happens, then in your position at your price, then you basically get all the fees. So you get much more fees than you would in an AMA pool. But on the other hand, if trades don't happen at your position, then you don't get anything. And in order to basically get fees as often as possible, you basically have to shift your positions to be at the correct price, or close to the actual price, which of course is a lot of work. And as you said, most people probably either don't have the time or the knowledge to actually do that. And that's where this yield optimization idea comes in, that people, instead of doing that themselves, could place the liquidity they want to provide into a so-called liquidity vault, and then there are different strategies. Maybe we even have the idea that the community can provide their own strategies, and then you can basically pick one, and then this strategy is used to basically manage your liquidity and shift it around. And I know that Marvin actually tried. You have a similar. Uniswap has these simple vanilla AMA pools, the Uniswap version 1, where you don't need to do anything of that. But it's quite inefficient, so you don't get as many fees as you could. So Uniswap has this version 2, where they have more concentrated liquidity, but that then also has the same consequence, that in order to use it effectively, people would have to shift their liquidity. So actually there would be a demand on Ethereum as well for Uniswap version 2 to have a yield optimizer. And as far as I remember, Marvin said that he actually worked on that and looked into that and tried to write that for Ethereum. But then it turned out that the transaction fees on Ethereum, the gas fees, were so high that basically all the money you made by optimizing your liquidity was eaten up by the transaction fees of shifting around your positions, which means that Cardano is much better suited for that because transaction fees are much lower. So it's much more feasible to actually make a big gain by smartly managing your liquidity.
Yep. My understanding was that, it's only possible on Cardano, and that you couldn't do this kind of dynamic thing on Ethereum for that reason. I was in a space where Marvin talked about, it's kind of a subtle technical detail, but it's probably worth mentioning that he had said that the ambition anyway was that the different algorithms and the different machine learning algorithms that I think Genius will initially provide for the yield optimizer, which is going to come, I believe, a little bit later after the DEX, because the DEX needs like real world data and everything, but that the community will eventually be able to contribute their own algorithms, people who are savvy enough to do that, and they can actually earn an income from that. So it makes it even more of a community and decentralized project, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yes, and that's related to the way the DEX, even if I forget for a second about the yield optimizer, the DEX will work is, people place orders and then somebody must fill these orders. So they can be filled with other orders if you find a matching order, or using a liquidity position. So somebody has to do these, basically scan the blockchain, look at the orders that are open, look at the available liquidity positions, and then make these, submit a transaction that actually does the trade. And everybody can do that. So it's completely open. Of course, and it's the same as you said for the yield optimizer. So our idea is, of course, Genius will provide something we call, I think, smart order scanners. I always forget the name, but anyway, I always call them order bots. That will do that and basically try to match orders as fast and as good as possible. But because it's completely open, that's another area where the community, where everybody that enjoys these things, enjoys writing programs, can participate. So everybody can basically look for open orders and then make the actual trade and fill them. So the smart contracts guarantee that everybody gets the money they are due, so the people placing the order get what they ask for, and the liquidity providers get their fee and so on. But if there's some arbitrage, then people can actually make money with that as well. And our hope is also that by having these competing smart order routers, that's the name, smart order routers, that it will be good for everyone. So especially, for the people using the DEX, because in order to have a successful such smart order router, not everybody can follow the same strategy. Maybe somebody goes for, I don't know, large orders, somebody else goes for orders that use unusual tokens or something like that. So in order, because these smart order router authors all compete, want to make as many trades as possible with their own routers, that will have this competition of order routers, which will lead to basically orders being filled as efficiently, as quickly as possible. And the same, and because we like this idea so much, we also, as you alluded to, want to use that for the yield optimizer later. So that basically same idea, that it's completely open and everybody can provide their own strategies, and then basically these strategies compete against each other. So it's good for the users of the DEX, but it's also interesting for people that enjoy programming and want to try to write these order routers or these optimizers.
I have a question for you, Lars, kind of maybe a little different than where we are right now, but education. I know you're big on it. What's Genius's plan on helping educate people who are new to maybe DeFi and how things will work on your DEX? And also, once it's up in testnet, do you guys plan on leaving it in testnet where people can go and paper trade? Or will it be closed down and out of testnet afterwards?
To answer the second part first, to my knowledge, we haven't discussed it yet, but I think it would, of course, make sense to leave it open so people can paper trade. And I just talked about these order routers that people can write. So obviously, if you have an idea for such a router, you would like to try it out without risking money doing that. And so I think it would be a good idea. I don't know what it entails. How much strain that would put on our infrastructure, but in principle, I think it would be great to do that and have it on testnet. And as for your first question, we do have the Genius Academy, which is dedicated to exactly that, to educate people on all things related to blockchain. And I think I mentioned before, it's totally free, even though then in future we might have premium features where if you have gens, you get access to those. But in the basic, right now, for example, everything available there is free, and there are already dozens or hundreds of articles and pieces on all sorts of topics related to blockchain. And obviously, there will also be specifically for Genius Yield, tutorials and introductions how to use the platform.
Excellent, thank you. I always think it's important. Education is always number one in my book. So,
won't argue with you there.
Cool. Any other questions? This has got a good flow going here. I'll pause here just a second to see if there's any other co-host questions.
Well, I just wanted to, we were talking earlier about, strategies, trading strategies and all that. And I'm not much of a trader myself because I don't like to be tending this stuff. So I'm more of a, I buy, just set it, and I buy what I have conviction on. I really am not a trader, but I know you guys have this AI trading strategies going on there. How is that supposed to work?
I should say that I'm also not a trader myself. I leave that to my wife, who is much better than I am. And I'm also not an AI expert, but in principle, the idea is, as I said, because of these liquidity positions, if you are a liquidity provider and want to basically make fees from people using your liquidity to make trades, then you want your liquidity positions to be at the right price points where the trades actually happen. And you can, of course, do that manually, but you also have to sleep, and you might not be an expert. So you want to use some sort of automated system. And that's the idea where the artificial intelligence comes in. So, if you have enough data, so if the DEX has been going for a while, then you can basically train an AI system to anticipate where the price of a specific token pair will move, or things like that. So basically you can train an AI to learn which repositionings of liquidity would be most beneficial. So that's the general idea, because AIs are very good these days at recognizing, spotting patterns and understanding these highly complex systems. So maybe better than humans. So the idea is to train these AIs with lots of trading data from the DEX, and then use that information to basically give intelligent recommendations where liquidity providers should place their liquidity for maximum gain.
And is that like an individual level, or is that like as a user, do you train your own AI according to your own, the strategies, or is it something more of a platform level for learning from all the trades?
No, we would. As I said, it's open, so everybody can. But as far as we are concerned, we would train the AIs on the whole platform, on all trades, not just individuals. And then basically, you as an individual could use the services of this trained AI for your own liquidity after it has been trained on the whole platform for a while.
Great, thanks for that.
It's kind of actually
welcome.
That exact thing that someone like you, Jenny, who may want to do some trading but don't want to risk a lot, or you don't really know, or you don't want to pay attention to it, because trading is something you have to pay attention to.
Or I want to sleep, like Lars said.
Yeah, like Lars said, you need to sleep, right? So it's actually something that would work perfect for someone like you. Just take risk management into consideration, right? Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I was really just going to follow up. I just didn't want to butt in. That was the big draw for me when I was pouring through the literature back in the early days, was that they wanted to make this reasonable for everybody else. So I don't know if they have every tiny detail figured out, probably not. But I guess the spirit of it is, normal retail user understandable, probably options that they can select, of a variety of different categories, which probably have yet to be determined. But, at the very least, it's probably like conservative, moderate, aggressive, versus maybe other parameters that you can choose. And there's probably going to be a sea of them once other people start contributing. But I would imagine the basics are like, hey, you want to make a little extra money, but you don't want to risk too much. Here's a very conservative way to do it. Maybe you get a little 2-3% on your yield, but it doesn't do anything aggressive on your part, and you can just kind of set it and forget it, And I think that that was a huge draw for me, and I don't really see that in any of the other. I don't see that in any other DEXs in any ecosystem, including Cardano. So that was like a big appeal to me. I'm right there with Jenny. I don't have the time or the acumen for it, and I think that's probably going to be most people.
It's certainly also me. I've always been fascinated by AI since I was like a teenager. So yeah, I think it's very cool, and I would love to use it myself.
There's not going to be any Lars trading strategy articles at Genius Academy.
Let's see, but I don't think so. Probably
There
rather
could be a
Marvin
hero.
trading. I just want to say I have to leave like on the hour, so
Yep.
maybe if there are some
I was just going to
interesting
say
last questions.
follow-ups because I know you had to be out on an hour in Epoch. You get to finish it up. You got the last hand up.
Yeah, I was going to ask just briefly. I got a question in my DMs about the technology that you were highlighting between the fiat and your tokens, right, used on the launchpad. Is that going to be open sourced and available to others in the ecosystem?
Due to technical difficulties and time restraints, we were unable to end the Twitter space properly with Dr. Lars. Please check out the links below for more information on Genius Yield.